Hello. Welcome back to Connect This. I just never get that right in the first try. Connect This. That's way better. That's what we're doing here. We got to connect this episode. It's been a little while. I'm out of practice. But we've got a great panel. So rather than doing a warm-up panel to get back into the show, I brought a panel I've been excited about bringing on for a long time. And we're going to introduce them here and then dive right into the discussion. I'm going to start off by introducing Jessica Grogu Engle, who is the Yurok Telecommunications Corporation CEO. We've got Matt, the Wookiee Rantanen. He was the director of technology at the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association and he's also a Tribal Digital Village, and he has like 8 other different titles. He's amassing them. Travis, I'm calling the collector Carter from USI Fiber in Minneapolis, who is a tremendous fan of the Star Wars universe.
And then so the pressure is, what do we call you? Would it be Chris Chicken Mitchell?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there's any chicken wings in the Star Wars universe.
I'm just call them wings.
Yeah. But I have seen 500 chickens commit to you 100% in the past. So yes.
No, Matt knows my deep dark secret. I am Chris, the failed parent with the kid who says Empire Strikes Back is boring, Mitchell from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance.
Yeah.
I do know this, and I tried to bury it, but you've just brought it back up to the surface.
He's been spoiled by the rebels, like the modern, television
cartoon or what?
The cartoon where everything's happening all the time. There's constant action, and there's moments of Empire where you have to just sit there and think and deal with your feelings.
See, I explained to my kid the concept of adoption before I showed him Star Wars to make sure that he even faked that he enjoyed it. So yes, nice. We had the same problem at my house. This isn't that good, Dad. It's that great. After the 100th time you've seen it, it's awesome.
The Bad Batch just got renewed for a second season, so woohoo!
So we are going to be talking about broadband in tribal areas, talking about Indian country broadband. And Matt is someone that I've known for a very long time who's worked on this. And Jessica, we met more recently at the Tribal Wireless Boot Camp, which was wonderful. And I just really enjoyed the contributions you're able to bring and the experience you can bring from the Yurok tribe. So we'll talk more about that after we get past the opening. But I do want to ask, and I'll ask you this first, Jessica. It's out of the cold, but are you feeling good about federal broadband efforts? I know you're involved in multiple ones. Just give us a quick read on how you feel when I just throw that at you.
Well, I mean, like with NTIA, it's exciting. It's like the first time where there's a grant that we fit into without having to adjust our edges to fit into that particular funding stream. It's a little nerve-wracking because it's like, this is such a huge opportunity, once in a lifetime, and we got to get it right, but there's only a year to do it in. So that's been the big struggle for me, is that there's so much need, and how do you fit it into this one particular funding stream? And so I'm hoping that there's additional funding coming down, but also just like re-looking at the way that the federal government views telecommunications and broadband of any sort. It's like, tribes have the ability to do this sort of thing on our own. And, they've always been held to this telecommunications or telephone company as a standard for being able to access these funds. And so it seems like the tides are changing. I don't want to get overly excited, but, it's looking good. Hopefully it'll continue this route until we get it solved.
So we've got optimism starting off. Matt? How do you feel about it?
You ready for the pessimism? Oh, so I feel good in the fact that, I think Jeffrey Blackwell and I and the National Congress of American Indians and several folks in the policy space for the past 6 or 7 years have been asking for a foundational start to federal support of this. And that number has always been $1 billion. So we're happy to see that was the number that was chosen. There's obviously a lot of other contributors to this space, but, we've been active and aggressive about, setting some sort of a foundational space that we can work in that goes to the tribes, that actually flows to the tribes. Like Jessica said, we don't have to bend and reshape ourselves to be able to attain the dollars. it actually fits who we are. So that's a very positive note. It's a little wonky as it's coming through NTIA, but I think everybody's learned to adjust to that. Obviously it's a stressful time to try to get your act together before the application window closes on September 1st. But those of us that are involved with all the things ethereal in the policy space know that there's more money coming, have seen some components of what that might look like, and believe that there is, another very large round of money to support exactly what we're doing here, to pick up those that are probably going to miss this initial application window or not apply for the full project, and maybe pick up portions of that project moving forward. There's a lot happening. So provided all of this stuff actually does what it's supposed to do, we should be in a really good space moving forward.
And this is something that I think Jessica and Matt might want to also comment on. But Travis, how are you feeling about EBB now? You were pretty bullish on it several months ago.
The idea is amazing. The execution, not so much. Let's just say that if hold on, how negative should I get? So if we get paid someday, that'll be a good deal. Let's put it that way. Are we going to spend a lot of time and energy to chase down the money? It'll get to a point where we'll just let it go and move on. So if a private company had been running this program, they'd be out of business. But we'll just leave it at that. So, but again, we don't have a lot of, we don't interact with the federal government at all because we're in a metro area where we're doing most of our construction. So, but I do feel for the people. I mean, it's not an easy process from what I understand, listening to folks, making sure they get all the I's dotted right, all the T's crossed correctly. And then when you get funded. So as far as my little small taste of the government programs, would I do it again? No.
Jessica, give us a sense of what that's been like for you, and then we'll go to Matt too.
Well, I mean, it's a hugely beneficial thing for the Yurok reservation in particular. The income is so low. Blanketly, Del Norte County, the county in California that we're primarily in, gets free school lunch, period. Like, in general, this entire region is low income. So off the bat, everyone should qualify in some way, shape, or form. The problem that I had with it is that there's no administrative allowance, and there is a lot of administration to be able to get people signed up, to be able to input the system and get them verified. And then the nightmare that I've been having is with the tribal lands component. Their CSV files you have to upload. It's like battling against a brick wall because it doesn't allow it doesn't see every customer as being on tribal lands that truly are. And then once you are just like, you know what, screw it, it's the last day of the month, I'm just going to force them through, and $50 is better than nothing. It doesn't let you go back in and update the tribal land piece. It's just an issue with USAC. I believe it's been in existence since the beginning of time, that has never been resolved. But ultimately, I've been pretty fortunate. I have some amazing staff. Like our GIS staff took Survey 123 from our GIS, put the application in there, and cold called all of our customers. So we have everybody but like 40 in and verified now. But we missed the month of May. We got like maybe half in June. And so July and ongoing, we should be okay.
Yeah, so similar problems here in Southern California, but the system is designed for incumbent telcos, right? This is designed for them specifically to manage their lifeline and those types of efforts. And if you're on rails on that system, you already have a program in place that's been utilizing that system, then everything is peachy and you just move through. Anybody that's new is battling a barrier of, they don't have things scaled to our size. They don't have things designed to fit, the parameters that we're required to enter. And so we're submitting this CSV file comma separated value file, and it doesn't accept it and it refuses it. And so you get on tech support and you email the tech support email help. 3 weeks later, you get the first response like, oh, we're swamped. Can you email this email address? So then 2 more weeks go by and you get a response from that email address that says, we'll try, but we're underwater. So it took us 2 months just to get us established in the system. We finally applied. It was last Thursday, I think, for the first time. Or what is today? Thursday? It might have been Monday that we applied for the first reimbursement, the very first reimbursement, and it's been that difficult. So,
and it sounds like you may not get that immediately from Travis's experience.
Yeah, luckily.
Yeah. Has anyone gotten any? Have you actually gotten any money yet? Or
so, National Digital Inclusion Alliance is tracking this pretty heavily, and I would imagine they would be able to answer those questions. But I haven't. Our system has not gotten any.
I think Jessica,
yeah, we did get the reimbursement for June.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a pretty silly system because they extended the date when you could certify your claim, but they didn't extend the date when they take the snapshot.
Right.
So on June, when they took a snapshot, we didn't have anybody verified, so we couldn't claim for the month of May. And so while at the tribal boot camp, I'm like staying up, before the last minute of the last day of the month to make sure everybody was in there for July 1st to be able to verify and get those claims certified. So it's a pain. It's a huge pain. And it doesn't make any sense why they made it so difficult. It's like waste, fraud, and abuse is not prevented by making it impossible for us to submit a claim for verified and eligible people.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I found the point where the clerical costs were getting so high to process the claims that I just pulled the plug on it. And because I had 3 people full time working on this thing, and to like what Matt said, emailing into the abyss because relatively simple. We're not talking complex data streams here. It was like name, address, their number. It wasn't being accepted. So the clerical side of it became quite a job. So I think next time if this comes around, I'll just give away like 1,000 free vouchers and for a month or 2 and call it a day because it's less hassle.
It really is.
I mean, it's
like simple, like if the last 4 of their social starts with a 0, don't even attempt. Fortunately, since most of my customers are tribal citizens, I'm just like, if that's the case, then I'm using the tribal ID instead.
Did you guys find it interesting how many people knew about it though? We had so many people call up and say, we're EBB, here's my code, we're ready to go kind of thing.
Did you find out where? I mean, that's schools or
that's city based. That is not rural based, right?
Okay. I was curious about that.
Now, what we're getting is people from Los Angeles County calling us up saying, hey, are you distributing the devices? Because LA or wherever I live isn't, they don't have them available anymore. But we see that you're distributing devices. Can we come get them from you? And we're like, at what point are you seeing that rural San Diego County tribal is serving LA County at all? And when you go to the website, everything in California is just listed in a pile. There's no designation to what they're serving or where they're at geographically. It's just a mess.
Yeah.
So we're gonna,
and as devices go, like I think I'm just gonna have the local shipping company mail them out to the customers because we're having a pretty big surge of cases in and around our area. And so as far as the administrative costs, the cost of like an admin clerk to schedule people to come out and pick them up, it's cheaper just to throw them in the mail.
Yeah.
So I wanted to answer the question about how I'm feeling about federal broadband efforts, and I'll just note that all of this resonates with my complex feelings. We're starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel, perhaps, of the infrastructure bill. And there's parts of it that I like. There's parts of it I'm deeply disappointed in. But the thing that I would highlight, and we're going to talk about this more, Sean and I are going to talk about this in the Community Broadband Bits podcast that'll be published on Tuesday, is that it requires state governments to develop plans that local governments have to be involved in and have to comment on. And that is really important because local governments have historically just had to deal with the reality of federal funds, and the federal government decides who gets them and when, and sometimes it's a good idea and sometimes it's not. But local governments just have to deal with the reality. They haven't had an ability to shape where they're going, and I think it's exciting. I think that's good. But the text that I've seen, and Matt, you can let me know. Is it the case that tribes will also have to go through state governments? Because that's the real problem. I thought we'd gotten away from that, but I'm worried if we're heading back into that here.
So what I understand from the infrastructure bill, and this isn't obviously set in stone, but that there will be billions more that flow through directly to tribes, and then there will be portions of the dollars that get allocated to the states that tribes will also be eligible for.
Okay. Good, because for people who aren't familiar, the history of tribes trying to get support from states is at best mixed. It's generally not worked out very well for the tribes.
Yeah, definitely mixed. And those of us that have been in one place for a long period of time pushing those buttons, I think we have a different result. Like California is very receptive to tribal. It has the highest number of reservations at 109, and pretty big population. And we're very active in the state efforts and what they do locally, regionally, and things. So I think they're a little more responsive than other states. I mean, I know relationships with states, tribes that don't even want their tribes to be within their borders. I mean, it's a nightmare.
So at this point of the show, I wanted to update longtime viewers and fans that sometime in February, Travis and I made a bet in the vicinity of Doug Dawson regarding whether or not the FCC would, by some point in February 2022, have adjusted the broadband definition, the definition of what broadband was.
The speed.
And I felt supremely confident that it would be done. I probably would have even gone with like October or November of 2021. And now I don't know. I'm starting to think that I may end up buying wings for all of next year whenever Travis and I go out.
I kind of want to chime in on that. I kind of feel like this administration, in all of its appointments and strategies, we may end up with a 2-1 minority alignment for the administration, for the people that are in the FCC making decisions if they don't act soon.
Right. So the FCC should be 3-2, 3 people from the party in power, 2 people from the party not in power. And right now it is 2-2 because the Biden administration has not nominated its third person, and
soon to be
chair would be.
Soon to be 1-2.
Yeah, because in January, Jessica Rosenworcel, acting chair, has to step down, at which point Republicans will have 2 votes versus 1, and they will have the power in the Senate to more or less really make it very difficult to get another commissioner on, at which point I don't know when the definition for broadband goes up. And to give you an idea of this, if my understanding is from people who know, because I'm just someone who talks to people who know often and then reports what they say, often without changing it anyway. The people that I talk to say, if right now, as we're doing this show, Joe Biden announced who his FCC pick would be, that person might be confirmed in November. And at that point, you got to assume that the Republicans may be scheming just to maintain their power over the FCC. And so I think this administration has lost a significant edge. On top of that, they've not named an NTIA secretary who runs the NTIA. And NTIA is about to administer the largest broadband program in the history of the country. So I know that they're working on a lot of things, and I know that COVID's the top of the list, but I got to say that, like, if it ends up being that these positions are filled by the characters that many of us thought were almost certain to fill them in January, I'm going to be asking, why did it take 8, 10, 12 months to pick a person that we all knew was probably going to get that job? So we're in a position right now in which I think a lot of the things that we took for granted that would be happening soon might not be happening. And that really upsets me because I don't like paying for wings if I don't have to.
I mean, I'm going to side with Travis on this bet, I think.
So what do you want? You want a double or nothing? Is that what you're saying here? I mean,
I think
I'm not trying to. Okay.
No, No, and let's be clear, like even if you and I get together like every week, I feel like I will still at the end of the year be in a wing deficit to you. So
Well, I have a sense that you'll be magically not around in 23, right? Yeah, somehow you disappear for a whole year. So
well, I'm not going to eat wings by myself. So
No.
yeah.
So you have to look
and
at
this
it
is
as
all you can choose from, right? Yeah.
I think, Chris, you have to look at it as a win-win for you, whether you have to pay for them or not.
Yeah.
You at least get to have wings
No,
as many times as you're with Travis.
Well, that's true. And I'll say that it is a mystery to me how Matt, among other friends of mine, all happen to live more than 1,000 miles away from wherever I happen to be. Most of my friends don't live anywhere near me. So Travis, I'm expecting that you're looking for property in Florida somewhere right now.
Yeah, quickly. No. I'm excited to get back on our wing tour. To answer your email from this morning, by the way, I am ready anytime you are. So to go out and have wings.
Excellent. Here we go. We're gonna move into the most eagerly anticipated part of the show. As promised in Telecom Peekaboo, this is something that I was guessing Jessica would recognize. I know Matt recognizes
the cell tower.
Yeah, so like that's as best we can tell. That dish though is related to it, right?
Yeah, so I think it's called a cellophone pole. If you look at it,
let's look at the L&B on the satellite. I mean, it looks like it's receiving only though. So,
and if you look at it, it's aiming at a mountain. It is not aiming. I'm pretty sure it's not aiming at a sky because I know the terrain. Yeah. It's actually aiming up to the Palomar Mountain Range, the north side of the Palomar Mountain Range.
You're right. So it is not a satellite dish. It's a reflector for the wireless signal coming in, probably to feed this small cell. This looks like an original. Boy, that's a cell site, but it.
Yeah, that's a macro cell, isn't it?
Yeah. It just kind of is an interesting configuration. How it's just right there on a pole. Is it, Matt? Is this out by your house or what?
It's on the way to my house. Yeah, on the Highway 79 South in Southern Riverside County.
So I'm going to take the little bit of trivia that Matt gave me with the dish acting as a wireless backhaul as a reflector, probably going up to some sort of hillside. Yeah. Telephone. There you go. No trespassing either.
Yeah. No trespassing. What? The general guardrail?
Yeah, that's a very interesting design, though. This is my second favorite design. My favorite one is if you're out in California in some places, they make them look like palm trees. I like when they do that.
We have palm trees. We have evergreen trees. The weird thing about this one, though, I think, is that there's no fence. There's no building. Yeah. There's no enclosure. There's no protection. There's
no generator either. It didn't look like. Chris, put that back up, would you? Yeah, it's kind of like they were just driving down the road and said, all right, it'll work here. And
yeah.
It's like, here's the dead spot. Oh, there's a telephone pole. Let's just a cellular phone pole. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cellophone pole.
Cellophone. There you go.
Digging up the right image.
Yeah, careful what you put up on the screen, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there.
Yeah, you're right. There's nothing. There's no generator. There's no barrier. I mean, it looks like it's just right alongside the. Well, they did put up this metal protector, I guess, but yeah.
The guardrail thing, but that's I mean, there's a couple of.
There's a warning here, a caution.
Yeah, there's a couple of bollards in front of the.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. So
dish.
Aerial power to it. Yeah, I think so we had a dead spot somewhere, and there's security.
This is powered by Enza, isn't it, Matt?
It's right on the fringe. So that's the edge of Vail Lake property, which Temecula owns. So I am not positive whether Temecula's power goes out there or if.
But it would be subject to blackouts fairly regularly during fire season, right?
Oh,
or no?
Yeah. SoCal Edison gets shut off almost as much as San Diego Gas and Electric there. Yep.
So that was a fun one. I knew that.
I like that one. And that was, you took that picture?
Yep.
Oh, they're even better than when you just Google search random things. So.
Oh, I think almost all of them have been pictures I've taken. Yeah. We've had a couple that I took, and we have one or two that some folks have sent in that I've been trying to hold for the right moment, I think.
Well, you need to bring one of these times. We should put up like the wireless or the wired distribution network from like the Philippines or Bangladesh. You know, where you can't even see the sun. There's so many wires up there. Those are some of my favorite.
We did get a few of those from one of our fans.
My parents brought me a shirt back from Vietnam that says Vietnam Telecom. Yeah, and you can see a pole, and then it's spaghetti.
Exactly. You know, one question real quick. You've used the word fans as a plural. Are you sure there's not a, you know, I'm kind of going with fan.
You know, it's weird. They all have Russian accents.
Yes,
they
exactly.
have Twitter accounts. They have social media.
Yeah. And they want you to they want your bank information too, don't they?
They do. Yes. Yeah. So,
but only to give you money, not to take from you.
Yeah.
I did get a note today from someone who said they found a security vulnerability on our site and were asking about disclosure, this and that. And I'm sort of like, we're running WordPress pretty much straight out of the box. Like, I'm pretty sure that you're a scammer. So, I mean, it's WordPress. Of course, there's vulnerabilities. Like, it's WordPress. So, anyway, let's talk about Tribal Broadband before we lose our fan from Russia with love. So I also wanted to get started because I feel like it might be helpful. Matt, you already noted was 109 tribes in California, the most tribes in any state. Do you want to run through just some basic stats on where tribes are, how many of them are, and federally versus state recognized? Just a few basic things.
You know, nationally, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 574 federally recognized tribes at the moment, somewhere around 86 state recognized tribes. You know, California has 109, Alaska has a whole different situation, so that, you know, you could argue that Alaska is all tribal. And then there's Oklahoma, which is now all tribal-ish. And so there's quite a few there. I think the Northwest has somewhere around 28 or 29, right, Jessica? Like if you go Oregon, Washington, Idaho.
Yeah.
And then you have some spread out through the Great Plains. You have a cluster of tribes that didn't get forced out of the East, or people stayed behind as the colonies were settling the East Coast. And so there's some remnant tribes. Cherokee Nation happens to be the biggest one over there. They got split in half, and there's Cherokee in Oklahoma and Cherokee on the coast, East Coast. So we have tribes that have 3 members left because the federal government was very strategic in cutting them into small bits so that they could not survive, generations. And we have a few tribes that are a little over 300,000. I think the Cherokee Nation as well as the Navajo Nation are both over 300,000 enrolled. Navajo Nation has approximately 130 some thousand enrolled members living on the 27,000 square miles regularly, but there is speculation that during COVID, when people lost jobs and were evicted from apartments and things, people retreated back to the reservation, and there's potentially 180 to 185,000 people on the reservation now that same infrastructure needs to support, which is a struggle during COVID. And we have tribes spread all throughout. Jessica, is Yurok's the largest tribe in California as far as population? Yeah.
Land and population. Yep.
What's the population?
So we have about. So the tribal membership is about getting really close to 6,500. The population on the reservation is around 900, but there's pretty large ancestral territory where we have groupings of populated tribal membership, but the majority of our tribal members actually live in the Humboldt County area, the South area.
Right.
Yeah, which is crazy to me because it's like the largest tribe in California. California has the largest need of broadband, like the largest gap in that, but for a huge portion of our reservation, there's no utility whatsoever, not even power. Like if you look at the Yurok reservation on the map, it follows along the Klamath River from the mouth and about 48 miles up and 1 mile on each side. The center portion of the reservation is the Pequon district, and they're almost out of water. Like their water source is drying up, and they don't have any sort of communications like one of the things that makes it really challenging about these places and trying to solve the problem is that if you spend too much time thinking about the actual problem, it kind of can,
it's overwhelming.
heavy.
Yeah, it can consume you. So, the tribes were put on reservations. Sometimes those reservations were in land areas where that tribe occupied, and sometimes not. So in the case of Oklahoma, many of those tribes were moved from the East Coast into Oklahoma to be centrally located, to be managed. And so that's not a place that they were accustomed to traditionally, and they didn't know how to operate in that environment. And the trust responsibility of the federal government was to provide the resources to the reservation where the people live. Well, but within the case of broadband and communications in general, we've seen, I don't know how many times the incumbent carriers have been incentivized to build out these regions and haven't. So it is.
Yeah, I want to talk about that for a second, and let's actually talk about telephone, because this is something where it used to be really easy to say the United States built this amazing telephone system and connected everyone. And I've learned that that's certainly not the case. So, no. Jessica, you reacted to that. What is it? What do you want to share in terms of the telephone?
Well, I mean, just this region in general, the Northern California, not what most people call Northern California, which is to me central, but like really the northern portion of California, there's a lot of reservations, a lot of tribes, and no telephone, none whatsoever, no power. And, just those basic things that a lot of people take for granted. And, it's kind of frustrating because I've had to like educate people when I'm talking to them about, even as simple as a vendor trying to sell a product to me as the IT director. Like I have to like go back and show them where we are in our deficits. Like we can't go to cloud-based computing for this particular solution because we don't have the bandwidth to support it and we don't have a means to access it. And so, just that sort of thing. And when it comes to telephone in general, if there was telephone, we could do DSL, there would be a solution that we could find, but there's just not.
Yeah.
Well, and it's worth, Matt, I mean, let me set you up for this, because like that's in really Northern California. In Minnesota here in Shakopee, which is not too far south from where Travis is, the Shakopee Midwankadon, they were right next to Prior Lake in these two cities that have been growing for a long time. And there's just like this circle where you just don't have telephone service where the tribal reservation is. You have telephone companies that have connected everyone right up to that line. And then they ended up building a fiber network and purchasing a telephone switch, to connect hundreds of people, a switch that probably could serve 500,000 people, because they don't scale down that small, because they had never gotten telephone service. So it isn't just a rural issue. It's just that these areas were just left behind by the telephone companies.
Yeah, and the studies that have been done show that number is 70% coverage for tribal land. So 30% of homes on reservations do not have access to plain old telephone service. So 911 that's tied to your address doesn't exist for 30% of the tribal homes. So that's, it's really it's one of those things where, I sit on panels at conferences and I often follow incumbent telephone companies that preach about their achievements and the people that they've served. And they're like, yay, 98.5% of our footprint is covered, or of the people in our footprint are covered. Yay us. And I'm like, guess who the 1.5% is? And that's enough of a percent of a population to be able to leave out those tribal communities. So
then we have a situation in which the federal government has attempted to rectify that in a couple of ways. And as you said, can you just share, each of you a description of like a time in which the federal government gave someone money to connect you and they didn't do it?
Yeah. I'll let Matt go first if you want to. I mean, I'm kind of salty about it, so give me a second.
Yeah, it's, so there's several incentives to incentivize these telcos in Lifeline and I forget the name of the other component, but it's the hardest to connect folks. There's been money in those
high cost fund.
High cost, yeah. So there's been money in those forever, and they continue to just justify that it is not enough money to be able to pull this off. And you know, as running an ISP, I understand that there are homes that are outside of the obvious network design that incur costs that are far higher than what your base population requires of you. But this is, from our perspective, this is not a what does it cost per household issue. This is a how do we get everybody services issue. So the federal subsidies should be designed to force incumbents to connect the population. And whether that is a 100% of the population scenario, is that the ruling? Or is it a certain percentage of the geography? Because I know in some of the newer deals with some of the wireless companies, the percentage of the geography is required, which actually forces them to hook up the rural populations because they have to get into the 90s in percentile of the geography. And in doing so, they have to serve those communities that live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the same with RDOF and as well. You know, the RDOF awardee for the majority of California, it's just a wireless service provider. But, you know, as far as that goes, like, you know, our particular carrier of last resort in this region is Frontier. And, you know, they have not invested anything at all into this Northern California region of their infrastructure. And so, you know, simple things like if it sprinkles one day, all of a sudden those who are connected to a plain old telephone service can't make phone calls, you know? Like, you know, things like that are really frustrating. And the fact that, you know, like Matt was saying, when you look at it from a profit standpoint, sure, it doesn't make sense. It's going to cost a heck of a lot of money to build out. And there is not a huge population, you know, 900 homes and businesses within a pretty large area and a difficult terrain. Sure, I get that. But that's, I guess, why we're doing it. And that's why, you know, now I'm the CEO of the Yurok Telecommunications Corporation, because my motivation is not a profit margin, a return on investment. It's about solving a problem because nobody else has, you know. And how long they've been getting it? I mean, before Frontier, it was someone else. And before them, it was someone else. And each time this infrastructure has changed hands, the person acquiring it has not invested any money. And so the copper wire infrastructure, the plain old telephone service lines have not been, you know, maintained well. And so it's a mess, and it's going to be an expensive and difficult process. In addition to the fact that, you know, in California, because of the fires, they're wanting to move all of the above ground utility underground. So you add that on top of, you know, the CEQA requirements, the California Environmental Quality Act, and it's going to take a while and a lot of money. But in the end, it'll be worth it.
So I was, Jessica, you set me up perfectly, and then you noted that you were the new CEO, because I was going to say it'd be an awful time to be the newly named CEO of a telecommunications corporation in the area.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Yeah, I'm excited, but I'm also like, you know, I'm fully aware of the gravity, you know, that it's a huge problem, and it's not like there's not one light switch or $1 billion that's going to solve it. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money. And so that's something that the commitment, even if you get a loose commitment from an incumbent, it wouldn't ever, you know, cross the finish line and solve the problem completely, moving this region across the digital divide. Like every step forward is a win. Like, you know, as simple as earlier this year getting awarded the 2.5 licenses, you know, that was a win. And, you know, being able to apply for the EBD program without having that designation of the eligible telco, you know, each step forward is a win. I know it's going to take a long time and a lot of money. And so, you know, I hope that the federal government gets to come and,
you know, so let me throw this out there, and Matt, let me ask you to respond to it first. I'd love to hear what Travis has to say. I'll talk about technology for a second. One of the things I heard after our Tribal Wireless Bootcamp, which you know, we've we talked about on a community broadband bits podcast. If people aren't familiar, you can sort of Google around and learn a little bit about it. Some has been written. I'm still going to write a big article about it, hopefully sometime tonight or tomorrow. When I got back from that, a lot of people were really excited and talking about like this 2.5 gigahertz is real opportunities. Someone that I really like, because they sometimes have contrary opinions and they tell me when they think that I'm wrong, wrote to me and said, why are you wasting your time on this wireless stuff? We need to do fiber. We got to get fiber out. That's the solution. And so I'm just curious how you react to that.
So we're hearing that a lot, that now there's enough money to pay for fiber. Now that this federal money's coming, why are you even dealing with wireless? And what some of the newcomers to this space don't understand is that fiber is a massive obstacle in management, and it is the be all end all. It's where we'd like to be for every single connection. Don't get me wrong, I'm not technology specific, I'm technology agnostic, but I am also very aware of what the cost structure is for fiber versus wireless, and whether or not the communities that we're working with can support those things, whether or not there's enough human capacity to manage a wireless plant and be able to support that in each of the small reservations that exist.
You just said a wireless plant.
Sorry, I meant fiber. Weird. So anyway, fiber plant. Go ahead.
Do you think that there's a difference in terms of the human capacity to manage a wireless network versus a fiber network?
So I'm speaking a little bit close to home, where we're managing a wireless network that serves multiple communities, where this money that's coming will sort of incentivize tribes to step off that network and potentially manage their own, right? So they're going to take on a fiber responsibility to manage their own reservation, and they're going to then concern themselves with, okay, how do we now bring fiber to our municipalities? How do we bring fiber to our community homes? And so I think a lot of folks aren't prepared for what that means in their small community, attracting the right people to be able to run those types of businesses, whether or not they have that human capacity already within the reservation. Populations are small, and so they're going to be relying on outside resources, and outside resources are tapped at the moment with this much money flowing. So I'm not negative to fiber. I just think that people are jumping into it going fiber and not actually looking at what that means. And we have some gnarly geography. I mean, we have some, 3,000-4,000 foot differences in elevation from, just a few miles, 10 miles away. And that makes it tough. We have a lot of rock. We have a lot of situations where small reservation, county land, private land, small reservation, county land, private land. So doing this as a consortium and running fiber everywhere, as a consortium would be complicated as well. So there's permitting, there's EPA evaluations, there's things that need to be determined. And I think every single tribe isn't prepared for that. I think some tribes are prepared for that. And I'm excited for their growth opportunity. And I think that getting fiber as a backhaul for every single reservation should be a mandatory step, so that at least you can run a wireless network that has enough backhaul to support what you're trying to do. But I don't think wireless is off the table until, that level of infrastructure can be created. And if you look at the national infrastructure map of fiber, there needs to be a massive fiber densification to be able to serve that. And I'll honk this horn all day. As part of the Obama administration work of the CTO of the United States, we identified 8,000 missing miles to connect the lower 48 states tribes, which is about 320 land masses, to a meaningful fiber location. There's about 8,000 missing miles, and California has 1,800 of those miles. So that is roughly $1 billion problem anyway. So I think there's a big leap to make to get fiber everywhere, but I think we need to get there eventually.
Absolutely. I mean, for us, we don't have fiber near the reservation, and we get our bandwidth from pretty far away. And so once we get the fiber to the reservation so that we can have a backhaul, the next step would be to get it all across and hopefully to the home in at least some of the more populated areas.
So, Travis, are there any questions that are popping up as we've been talking about this?
Well, so I'll be honest with you, I'm not as educated as everybody else is on this particular
Yeah, but
call.
you say
so
that
I
about
would-
every episode. You think
Yeah,
you're a
yeah, yeah.
child.
But I was just looking at the
Oh, you have them on here.
yeah, it's pronounced Yurok, right? Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yep.
So I was looking at the
Yurok.
geography of the reservation. And did I hear you right that there's 900 residents that you're serving in the Yurok reservation?
No, I'm serving about 175 to 200 homes. That's who I'm able to serve currently with our wireless backhaul. I mean,
Okay.
but this is a redwood. We're along the river, and there's canyons and mountains and trees.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my!
yeah.
So to be clear,
so-
Jessica, you're saying you have like 175, 200 customers. There are like 900 people living in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
reservation. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, and then the other question I have is 169 run right through your reservation?
Towards the top part, yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Do you guys is that a federal road, or does the reservation have right of way access to that road? Do you know how that works?
Yeah, we have right away. So, like for example, along 169, it goes to the end of the road. We call it.
Yeah.
In 2018, we brought power lines down to the end of the road, and that was the first time that particular area got power. As soon as
Wow.
we, finished that build and it was lit up by PG&E, PG&E took ownership over that. And if we were able to go back a while, I would have, insisted on we retaining ownership of those. But yeah.
Okay.
Because
I was wondering if Travis
now
is getting ready to ask about fixing
Well,
the speeding ticket he got.
No. I was just kind of looking at the infrastructure, because when you talk fiber, geography becomes a big player in in really rolling out a proper fiber network. And if you've got right of way and you have easement and you have the proper environment, it is a very viable thing. But it reminds me of a conversation I had last night about these subsidies. And when you were talking about these subsidies for the incumbent carriers who are there, I mean, we're talking about subsidies that have been going on for what, 30, 40, 50 years, right?
In various forms.
Yeah. And, the guy last night I was talking to is like, they could have built fiber 20 times over in all these locations. So it's I had, hearing it firsthand is very interesting. So wireless, though, has geography issues. So do you have pretty good luck out there delivering decent speeds out into some of these areas?
Oh, Jessica, different than me because of the geography, but go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, I mean, in some instances, yes. In other instances, no. I mean, the 2.5 is helping for some of the harder to reach areas.
Yep.
If the gear is so faulty, but that's another story for another day. And there's still some areas that just we cannot reach, and so those are some places that I need to expand on. It's like we have a tower on the top of a hill, but the homes at the bottom of the canyon are just not servable in that way.
Sure.
But we're, this is tribal lands too, and so you have to be really careful about weighing out the cultural impacts over getting people access. And so, that's a really important part. Is this going to impede this ugly tower with all these radios on it? Going to impede on the view shed of this really sensitive dance site. And so those are challenges too, and why we haven't been able to serve particular areas yet. But there's cool solutions. I was in Tuolumne County on vacation earlier this year, and I saw this tree tower, and it literally looked like a tree. It wasn't one of those tree towers. And so there's all kinds of different things that people have figured out to do, and it's just about being creative. So that's why I kind of like the picture on the side of the road with the cell. It's like sometimes you just gotta do something. Doing something is better than doing nothing.
Yeah, I think in Southern California we have a little bit better luck because we have really dry climate. We're not dealing with as much moisture, and where the tribes sit in San Diego County, we're not on the coastline where the marine layer comes in. We're actually east side of the county. So we have clear skies most of the time and really, low humidity. So that wireless signal transfers really well through that. The biggest problem in this space with wireless specifically is the lack of accessible spectrum from the FCC or the federal government allowing us to use it. So the cool stuff has already been allocated to either the military or the incumbents that exist, right? The wireless carriers that exist. If we had access to some of the the bands that they use for cellular that can go through trees and bounce off rocks, go around corners, kind of a thing, we would be solving this problem pretty well. Now, when TV white spaces came out, we jumped on board and we thought this was the greatest thing because this was going to be the solve. Well, the engineering department of the FCC chopped the legs out from under it and took the power away. If you had the power back in the TV white space and you actually kicked everybody off the analog and put them on the digital like they were supposed to, you would actually have channels that could be functionally used at the right power range to serve people in densely wooded areas and all kinds of different stuff that we have geography problems with now. But we have a sliver of this available spectrum in the world, and in situations in Southern California, we have towers that we have used it all. So if we want to do anything new, we have to license something or pull something down to put something new up.
Yeah, and I think that's a very very astute thing is 10 megahertz of spectrum in the you guys are using 2.5 or 3.65 or even 5 gigahertz.
Yep.
You can't serve a lot of people. You can't penetrate very far.
No.
So it's but yeah, I'd love some of that juicy 700 megahertz. A nice 40 megahertz slice there. Boy, we could make some changes.
You could make huge changes, and that would actually grow the value of wireless versus fiber. Yeah, wireless doesn't scale to the level of fiber, but to the endpoint, if you get fiber close and you can distribute off that endpoint, that fiber is your backhaul, then all of a sudden you're making a difference, and you're serving 100 megs to the home. You're not serving 15 megs to the home, which we're trapped in some of these situations.
But Chris, I think your picture that you brought up, I didn't appreciate it at the time, but you're looking at a cell tower owned by a major carrier, I assume, that is being wirelessly fed. It kind of says something, where most other parts of the country they're all fiber fed. So I think inadvertently you really.
I'm playing 3D chess here. I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, yeah, it was pretty astute on what you're really helps visualize the issue that these folks are facing.
Let's just be clear here that Travis thinks that because something I did that worked out, it was obviously an accident.
No, I did not. I'm probably like most other people did not appreciate the uphill battle you all are fighting.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that cell tower too, that clearly cannot be a 5G scenario. That probably is not a 4G LTE scenario with the amount of backhaul. It does need fiber to backhaul to be able to survive that. So
did you figure out what project was happening right around there? Are they getting fiber down through that?
They road? They potentially are going to put a conduit through that bridge to support the fiber runs that'll happen in that region later, but they're actually widening and fortifying that bridge.
When we were out there,
messing up my traffic.
When we were out there, we got stuck as there was some work going on. So I want to make sure before we check out, like what's working, and this is actually, I mean, maybe a little bit of what's not working also, but Jessica, I also feel like people who are like, well, fiber is the answer. Just give us if you can, a slight taste of what you've been dealing with fiber in Northern California, because if you go back to when that project started, I don't think you thought you'd be sitting here in 2021 talking about how it's not done yet.
Yeah, are you talking about the Columbus River Rural Broadband Initiative?
Yeah, I think so.
So this is a joint effort between the Yurok tribe and the Yurok tribe. So originally the grant was applied for, I think, in 2013, or at least awarded in 2013, and that was to bring fiber over from Orleans down 169 and then over Bald Hills out to the coast. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, that particular project is kind of frustrating because it's only in one of those only in California type of situations where the road to get from one end of the reservation to the other, there's a big section of it that's unpaved. And why is it unpaved? Because it's national park land, and national park doesn't want us to pave it. But there was a section of it that was being paved a few years ago, and they could have been putting conduit in at that time, and they didn't. Things like that. And the permitting process is just crazy. To be able to get the NEPA requirements, the cultural requirements met, and then on top of that, California's requirements, and then there's this whole other third-party review of your your entire environmental document, and that part is taking forever. So not only did different agencies have to do the cultural permitting and review, then somebody else has to take that and reinvent the wheel and start over again. It's just a huge waste of time. And ultimately, when it's all said and done, it's like, is this project going to be competing with all of the other projects that were exempted from that particular process and get, pushed out even further? So, it's one of those things where it's like, this project is a solution. It's the solution to getting access right now. Why are we stuck in this minutia of nonsense?
Matt, can you remind us about the nationally historically designated highway? It seems relevant to this.
It is so relevant to this. So this is a problem. I was just on the California Broadband Council meeting yesterday. I'm an advisor to them for the state of California. So to rewind to this issue that Chris just brought up. So I was at a California Public Utilities Commission hearing that was held regionally in the southern San Diego County area, or maybe Imperial County. And I was on the dais speaking, and they were asking for recommendations on how to, move the broadband efforts forward, and what were the barriers that I knew about in the regions. And I live in Riverside County, which is just north of San Diego County. And there is a historic highway that connects the coastline, eventually over to Palm Springs area, over the mountain. Historic highway, it got historic highway signs, and they refuse to allow the Anza Connect to run fiber down that highway because it was historic. And Anza Connect was trying to run fiber down that highway to support a tribe that has been living in this region for roughly 10,000 years. So I piped up, as I do, and said, so you're telling me that your paved road is more historic than a tribe that has been here long before, European occupation, long before, any of this existed. Your road is more important than them getting access to resources. And that kind of stuff pisses me off. I voiced my opinion a lot about these kind of things. And yesterday on the California Broadband Council hearing or meeting, it's live to the public. And some of the things that were brought up is like, okay, so California is looking at this $6 billion plan to do this open access fiber network that the state's going to manage. And I think 3.2 billion of it goes to those corridors and things. And, realistically, we need to start talking about streamlining permitting processes and the obstacles that sit in the way of the bureaucracy that sits in the way of actually succeeding in this. Because you can throw money at something all day long, but it takes you 18 months to get a permit that has to be reviewed by a third party for another half of a year. It's never going to happen. People are going to.
No wonder nobody wants to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You go broke before you even have a permit. So it just keeps rattling around in my head. So if you had an open checkbook to bring fiber to everybody, can it even be done? Or is there so many barriers in the way? Like you said, your historic highway or your national, whatever, your fancy tree that you can't go pie or whatever, can it even be done?
So I think if some of the money is used to help government take away those bureaucratic nightmares, then yeah. But if you don't take some of that away, it will stop some of the projects from being built. It absolutely will be a deal breaker in some locations for actual succeeding in this process with fiber. Okay. I'm guaranteeing that there are places that won't happen, but everybody's mindset seems to be moving forward, and hopefully we can unstick some of those obstacles that have been so horrible in the past, like forestry, BLM, national parks, things like that, where there are pathways that have to exist through those entities. So, okay, so there's just needs to be a process on how you get through that in a timely fashion to be able to support this. Another thing that happens, and I've seen this recently, and it's very frustrating, is you have the Department of Transportation for a state as big as California. I mean, we're fifth largest economy in the world, and you're building out roadways to support this economy. And yet, when there is a potential to run fiber in a roadway that has a scheduled maintenance to it that allows you to microtrench or do something, and it comes along, and yes, they've approved it and they've pointed state funds at it, and you're going to serve, this 18 miles of roadway is now going to get fiber, which changes the whole outlook for this next community or multiple communities at the other end of it, and some tribes. And they go out to bid because there's a bidding process and a bureaucratic process that they have to manage this, and that all the bids are too high. So now the project gets pushed to next year. How do you stop that problem too? I mean, because there was a project that was going to happen in a month that is now not going to happen for, more than 3/4 of a year. So how do you fix that? I don't know how you fix that, but something needs to happen in the process that takes away some of those, bureaucratic barriers.
Yeah, I don't, we have a very small version of that here up in Minneapolis. There's some government entity that owns some dirt that you can't go through. So you know what the answer sadly is? People on the other side of the dirt, you don't get the resource. And what's even more sad about it is because I always call them taxpayers. They hate that down at the city. I'm like, your taxpayers are they don't really, honestly, they don't care. They're like, nope, you can't go under our dirt. And that's what's even more ironic. You go under, so it looks identical tomorrow than as it did today and yesterday. But
and for the record, Travis is talking about the Minneapolis Park Board, which is somewhat uniquely strong as far as municipal structures go, and somewhat lacking in accountability when it comes to decisions along these lines.
But it sounds like Jessica and Matt have the same kind of problems. We need to get a fiber cable from here to here, and there's a road there. I guess in Jessica's case is a dirt road that you can't go through because there's some bureaucracies in the way of making it happen.
Yeah, oftentimes the people on the other side of the untouchable dirt are tribes.
Okay. But here's what's ironic, and this I've just learned this recently up here in Minnesota, is when they build bridges, in a lot of cases, they put conduit underneath the bridge to allow future expansion because they don't want people to be up there drilling holes in bridges.
Right.
So the bridge department has figured out how to get over like a body of water, but then when you get to the other side, you're stuck. You can't go anywhere.
Only in your state.
Yeah.
The rest of the country. The rest of the country hasn't figured that out yet.
Yeah, for the record, if anyone who's listening that has a whole bunch of power, overpasses, bridges, railroads, anything along those lines should have conduit, and frankly, should be a simple process to lease it. New York makes money off it, from what I can tell. They don't charge a whole bunch, but enough to pay for the cost of the program, maybe a little bit more.
And that's honestly, I started this whole conversation with one question I wanted to ask because I don't know how it works, but it seems like some of these tribes, especially out on the west where they've got large geographic areas, do they run fiber through and then sell wholesale transit or transport through their reservation? It seems like it'd be a great opportunity to build the infrastructure and fund it.
So historically, 23 years ago, sorry, Jessica, I'll be quick. They built around the tribes that had that obstacle, right? The tribe had a strategic location, and all you would have to do is pay transit across, and the tribe knew about it, would build the infrastructure from border to border. That's maybe more of a more common process or thought process now. It wasn't a common thought process 20 years ago. They didn't really understand why this made a difference to their communities, right? They didn't understand that getting access to those services were of value, or they asked for access to those services, and the companies were like, "Ooh, no, this is all about us," and they would just go around the reservation. Nobody but maybe like Navajo has a big enough landmass to stop you from going around.
Okay. I just thought it would be a great way to fund, especially, if you're getting out to cell providers and, other people that are on, it was just a curiosity.
Jessica, how are you going to respond to that?
Well, I mean, that's true. I mean, that is a thing, especially in our area. So when we build the fiber, there is going to be opportunity for people to want to use it. That's the idea with, the Klamath River Rural Broadband Initiative, is that it's connecting I-5 out to the coast. There's no other fiber that comes out to the coast. And reading that, interconnection. Also, the fiber that I'm hoping that it gets funded and built, I'm starting to feel like, oh gosh, there's too many obstacles after today. But that's connecting the south to the north along the coastal highway. I mean, when it comes to getting access to broadband, we need to have redundancy and other options, because some providers have a fiber cut upstream of them, and then that means you're down if that's your only choice of direction. And so redundancy, having multiple providers interconnect is how we keep the prices low too. Just in the south of Humboldt, they're building a high-speed cable landing. That's going to be a lot of bandwidth that is going to need to go places, and that people are going to want to send. And so that is an opportunity once we have the infrastructure in place.
Yeah, and you're in a unique scenario where you're poised to be able to put that in place. Other tribes, aren't forward thinking enough, or didn't, are more reactive to the situation, and the time to build, put conduit in the ground and build fiber, it takes a duration of time. So what is the timing of the project that needs your service? Can you match that on the calendar? Can you actually be ready when they're ready? Otherwise, they'll look for a solution that's more immediate.
Yeah.
And tribes, I don't know, historically have been taken advantage of by those types of scenarios, where if they were going to cross the land, and there is a tribe specifically here in San Diego that has 3 fiber pathways across its land, only 2 of them correctly have filed all of their paperwork and stuff with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And one of them was supposed to supply services to the tribe and still haven't. And this is 15, 17 years ago now. So there are situations like that throughout this country where, there was a cash payment made, but there was also supposed to be a follow-up and some services. And then the recording of that isn't even on file legally where it's supposed to be to manage that. So
I feel like as we're wrapping up, I think it is worth noting that this has been more of a downer than an upper, although we are in a time in which there is historic opportunities, whether it is through the license of spectrum that is available in many areas. Certainly don't want to get people to overthink this, in the sense that, like, most tribes do not have spectrum in most of their lands. So, but it is a case that some tribes have spectrum in some of their lands. So we can make use of that. There is money that is going to be available. It is difficult to figure out how to rapidly use that, but there's real opportunity out there.
There is. And this is a time where I think we need to help tribes understand that they shouldn't be consumers, they should be providers, right? They should be operating like other utilities that exist and incumbents that exist, and work at a wholesale level with the national network of things, and be able to distribute those services to their own people and their surrounding neighbors as the provider versus the consumer. So this is the time for tribes to shift from buying services at a retail rate to providing services at a retail rate, because you've stepped into that next realm. And I think that's a positive environment that we can look forward to in the future. We have the funding to be able to support some of those projects to get to that page in history. We have, probably one of the strongest atmospheres right now for helping tribes to identify these solutions and look at fiber maps and support some of the things that are happening. So, on an upbeat side of things, I think, the time is right. The time is now, and some of the resources are here and available. It's just, are we completely ready? And, what is it going to take?
Are you seeing
Yeah.
a shift of maybe some, people with some entrepreneurial spirit that want to get into running their own internet providers and, in any of these areas, or?
At the tribal level,
Yeah.
yes. And Jessica, I
Great,
think, can
great.
talk to that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I mean that's why the tribe created the Telecommunications Corporation, is because for that very reason. The entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well for the Yurok tribe.
Mhm.
Huge amount of excitement. Not just in the sense of being able to bridge that digital divide, but by us doing it ourselves, we get to create jobs for people that are cool. That they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do before because they don't have access to internet to go online schooling or even resources to find where they would get that education. And it's like, we're going to put you in school while I build this so that you can maintain it when it's all done. And you're going to be providing your aunt and your grandma internet for the very first time. And that alone there is really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally would want to climb 150 feet in the air on a tower, but my staff that do it, they're doing it because it matters. It's their kids and their grandkids that are going to be affected, and their relatives right now, getting access to the internet, being able to communicate. It's huge.
You're also
yeah,
creating local jobs too, which don't exist, right? These are local jobs with good paying salaries, interesting career opportunities, transferable to other communities. They can move away and work in same industry, but other locations. And I think your neighbors are really showing this as well, right? Your other neighboring tribes, Jessica, you can talk about them a little bit. I mean, we all know that this is happening.
Yeah, so like the Hoopa tribe, they're kind of at the other end of the reservation boundaries, and then the Karuk tribe that are Karuk. My mouth doesn't like to speak words, but on the other end that we're working with in Orleans, we're doing this, our own way. Each tribe is doing it their own way, but we're doing it, in a way that's collaborative and together, but separate. And like the Hoopa Valley tribe, they have a public utility district that is managing this. We're going the telecommunications route, and the Karuk tribe is somewhere in the middle with having like a chief information officer. And so we're all doing what works for the individual tribe, and the health of all of our broadband efforts is across the board for us. Like, if I were just to be thinking and working on Yurok alone and leave Hoopa and Karuk out of it, or vice versa, it wouldn't create a health of economy that we're trying to build. Like, for example, my three of my staff are tower safety and rescue certified. The Hoopa tribe didn't have anybody at the moment. They needed some help, and so our climbers went to go help them install something on their tower. Like, that's the way we work, and it's really cool because it creates this, the support network. And as we've gone outside of our little vacuum of just our small scope of knowledge, and reached out to the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp, getting Matt and Chris and now Travis, like the bigger our network expands, the healthier we all are going to be.
Excellent.
And just final question on that topic, Jessica. So you're talking like a full stack of employment too. Like, we're talking construction people, IT folks, fusion splicers, the whole thing, right? Not just running an ISP, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Nice, yeah.
we've had the WISP in the tribal government under the IT department for the entirety of its life, which is about 10 years. And now we're stepping out into this telecommunications land, this corporation that's going to create jobs all the way from the bottom up. Starting from the up, I guess with me being the CEO, I have to build that and build that team and that, ability to grow. But yeah, it's like every type of job is going to be created. And
do you see the are young people excited about the opportunities? And
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of momentum and excitement. I mean, there's also a little bit of skepticism too, right? None of this is real until that money drops. Once the money drops, then we can go, and there will be more comfort and assurance. Because right now, how many years have we been getting promises of the government going to solve the problem, whether it's through the high cost fund or through the rural digital opportunity fund, or any of these types of things that's going to bring the solution. Now we're going to do it ourselves, and there's hope, but there's also a little bit of skepticism until it really, the money's there to do it.
Well, and there might be a few bumps along the way, but I think at the end of the road, you're going to be much happier to have done it yourself. Because again, I'm not a big government guy. Let them, I'd rather do it myself, run it ourselves, and move on. So it's just how many hurdles does the government put in our way? And it sounds like you guys have as many as we do.
Yeah,
definitely do.
Well, I want to conclude the episode so that I know folks on the West Coast there, you probably have still work to do today.
Maybe.
Yeah, Matt, you probably have work to do tonight.
Yeah. I don't have work to do ever. It's always on.
So jangle all the way. I like that. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Matt, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. See you next week or 2 weeks from now, and then I don't know, next week, and so the week after that, and then maybe the week.
Yeah, I think we should just.
So Matt, are you giving Chris some actual labor to do, or what?
No, actually, I think
last time we were in Colorado together, we almost got mauled by a bear, which is a different way of saying we saw a black bear at some distance.
Okay, black bear at some distance that had just come out of hibernation and was pretty skinny, and I stood up as tall as I stood and said, "You want a piece of this?"
Yeah. Well, no, just remember, you just have to run faster than Chris. That's my theory.
That's not a problem. I have bad knees. Chris has bad ankles, and I got to beat.
Yeah. So for people who are interested, Matt and I are going to Mountain Connect, and then I'll be in the LA area very briefly for an event. And then also I'll be in Houston at the end of September for Broadband Communities, and DC a couple of times in October, it looks like, for some things. So
I think I'll be in DC with you at those times as well. So
are you setting up a meet and greet for your fan for autographs and pictures?
We're just gonna pre-sign a whole box of stuff for that person, and we'll just ship it to them.
Okay. So yes, if the fan would like an autograph, Chris is available. His fee is a plate of chicken wings. It's not expensive, so
it's a big plate though. Yeah.
Yes.
Is it flats only, or do you do drumsticks as well?
Oh no, he'll do everything. And if you go, Chris, take the last one, he never says no. So
right.
He's consistent. So
yes. I'm not a Minnesotan by birth.
No
I am willing
problem.
to try cauliflower bites. I'm excited to try buffalo cauliflower bites. So I'm going to add that to my repertoire.
Are you lying out loud in front of us on camera?
No. I mean, just about anything you soak in buffalo sauce, I'd be willing to try. So
I got some pine cones I'd like to sell you.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for their patience. I'm sorry if you tuned in and we're really excited and hoping the rest of the show would be about Star Wars. We did stay on topic for a lot of it, and I really appreciate I think we topped out at maybe 16 or 17 viewers. I know a lot of people will view this later or listen to the audio. I'm excited to have these conversations again. I don't know if we're going to have one next week, but we have several shows that are starting to line up that are going to be really fun through some of August and September, and we're going to keep it going strong. And yeah, it's been great. And that's another episode of Connect This.